Rizal's Morga and view of Philippine history. Foremost, let us know the book that is annotated by Jose Rizal. It is Sucesos de las Islas Filipinas, or in English translation, The Events in the Philippine Islands. It is a book written and published by Antonio de Morga, considered as one of the most important works in the early history of Spanish colonization of the Philippines. It was published in 1609. So this is a book that he copied manually, meaning handwritten ra iyang pagcopy sa book in British Library. It is a book annotated by Rizal with an introduction by Ferdinand Blumentritt. So this book annotated by Rizal has 8 chapters. First is of the first discoveries of the Eastern Islands. Second chapter of the government of Dr. Francisco de Sande. The third chapter of the government of Don Gonzalo Renquillo de Peñalosa. The fourth of the government of Dr. Santiago de Vera. Next is of the government of Gomez Perez das Marinas, of the government of Don Francisco Tello, of the government of Don Pedro de Acuña, and the last chapter is an account of Philippine Islands. So the first 7 chapters mainly concern the political events which occurred in the colony during the terms of the first 11 governor-generals in the Philippines. For present-day Filipinos, Chapter 8 is the most interesting because it gives a description of pre-Hispanic Filipinos, or the Indios of the Spanish contact. Chapter 8 is also the chapter Rizal wanted the most because it helped him reconstruct the pre-Hispanic Philippines, which he wanted to present to his countrymen. Now let us know the author of the book Sucesos de las Islas Filipinas himself, Antonio de Morga Sanchez Garay. He was a Spanish soldier, lawyer, and a high-ranking colonial official for 43 years in the Philippines, New Spain, and Peru, where he was president of the Real Audiencia for 20 years. He also was a historian. So, a glimpse of Antonio de Morga, Lieutenant Governor of the Philippines in the late 16th century, described the food of the Indios as follows in his book, Sucesos de las Islas Filipinas. He stated that their daily fare is composed of rice crushed in wooden pellars, and when cooked is called morisquita. This is the staple throughout the land. Cooked fish, which they have in abundance, pork, venison, mountain buffaloes, which they call carabaos, beef, and fish, which they know is best when it has started to rot and stink. However, Dr. Jose Rizal corrected that notion. He stated that this is another preoccupation of the Spaniards, who, like any other nation, treat food to which they are not accustomed or is unknown to them with disgust. The English, for example, feel horror to see a Spaniard eating snails. To the Spaniard, roast beef is repugnant, and he cannot understand how steak tartare or raw beef can be eaten. The Chinese, who have takuri and eat shark, cannot stand Roquefort cheese, etc., etc. Dish fish that Morga mentions that cannot be good until it begins to rot is bagoong, salted and fermented fish or shrimp paste used as a sauce in Filipino cuisine. And those who have eaten it and tasted it know that it is neither nor should be rotten. So, why Rizal wrote his annotation? First, to correct or comment on the details that is written by Morga in the book. Just like what I showed you earlier, some details are incorrect. Second, to defend the Filipinos. And third, Rizal wanted a history that is written from the viewpoint of an Indio. So in addition, there are 3 purposes for Rizal's annotation. First, awaken the unconsciousness of the Filipinos of their glorious ways of the past. Second, correct what has been distorted about the Philippines due to Spanish conquest. And lastly, prove that Filipinos are civilized even before the coming of the Spaniards. So Rizal wanted to nullify the claims of the Spaniards that if wala sila naabot, uncivilized Japon ta or ignorance. Rizal believed that if wala naabot ang Spaniards, more developed ang atong country and more, or should I say, richer ang atong country. So here's the Rizal's choice of Morga, or the reasons why Rizal chose Morga's book. First reason is the original book was rare. Morga's Successes was originally published in Mexico in 1609 and was therefore rare. Even Blumentritt notes that the book is so rare that the library that has a copy of it guarded it with the same care as they would in an Inca treasure. Inca treasure is a gold or silver or any other treasures by an Inca civilization. The second reason is Morga was a layman and not a religious chronicler. Rizal's second consideration for the choice of Morga was that it was the only civil as opposed to religious or ecclesiastical history of the Philippines during the colonial period. The main complaint against religious historians was that they dealt more with church history rather than the history of the Philippines and its people. So the third reason is that he felt that Morga is more objective than the religious writers whose accounts included many miracle stories. So Rizal claimed that Morga's account was more objective, more trustworthy than those written by the religious, which were liberally sprinkled with tales of miracles and apparitions and even the tales of the devils. Rizal stated that their aim was not to record history as it is, but to document the achievement of the religious orders and more importantly to edify their readers. The fourth reason is Morga, compared to religious chroniclers, was more sympathetic to Indios, and Morga was not only an eyewitness but a major actor in the events he narrates. With that being said, Morga was a primary source of information in the Philippines and its people at the point of first contact with Spain. Moving on to Rizal's interpretation of history. The interpretation of history makes Rizal both a boon and a bane to Philippine nationalism. He made historical assertions necessary for his time and purposes. Most of Rizal's historical assertions have been validated by recent research. However, there are flaws in his reconstruction of pre-Hispanic Philippine civilizations. There are three examples central to Rizal's arguments that will suffice to prove his influence. First, generations of Filipino school children from the American colonial period to the present have been raised to accept that the prehistoric Filipinos has a system of writing and an accompanying written literature which was destroyed by the missionaries who saw this as a work of the devil. With all those said, Rizal believed that they are systematically ruined by the Spanish. They are blamed for the loss of the pre-Hispanic Philippine syllabary and the extinction of written literature. Second is the view that pre-Hispanic Filipinos had an advanced knowledge of metallurgy, the evidence being the fine cannons made by an Indian named Panday Pira. So here, Panday Pira was mentioned even in Morga's fourth chapter on the term of Governor Santiago de Vera. Panday in Java and Borneo means metal worker or ironsmith. Rizal elaborated in his annotation that he is an Indio who already know how to found cannons even before the arrival of the Spaniards. However, this is opposed by Retana, saying that Indios cannot make large cannons. He also supported his claim with a document from Blumentritt stating that it was the Portuguese who brought the cannons and the one who taught the Tagalogs the foundation of cannons. Lastly is the existence of pre-Hispanic shipbuilding industry. This is also a view of Rizal that is considered to be an exaggeration by several people. So Rizal's annotation. Rizal annotated the book The Successes de las Islas Filipinas by Antonio de Morga. Rizal made comments, corrections, and analyzed the book and its sources. So the importance of Rizal's annotation to Morga was that he tried to use history and historical revisions not just to express his personal views on the historiography, but to create a sense of national consciousness or identity. Rizal emphasizes that Morga was the evidence and the primary source of history in the Philippines. Rizal argued that Filipinos before has their own culture and did not require a new religion or civilization from Spain. Ferdinand Blumentritt is Rizal's dear friend, and he is the one who wrote the introduction of Rizal's annotation. Also, he was the one who gave Rizal the first criticism of his annotation. So in his criticism towards Rizal's work, he cited two defects of Rizal's annotation which have been condemned. These are a historical use of hindsight and a strong anti-clerical bias. Even historians and scholars found Rizal's work to be too biased, too much work of a propaganda to be taken seriously. On November 19, 1889, Rizal thanked Blumentritt for writing the introduction of his edition of Morga. However, Rizal reacted strongly against Blumentritt's mention of Kyop. Correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know how to pronounce this word. Rizal hated this name because he is a journalist who wrote racist anti-Indio articles. On November 22, 1889, he returned the draft of Blumentritt's introduction together with his corrections. Apart from the deletion of the name Kyop, Rizal also cut out the text relating to fraternidad or fraternity between Indios and Spaniards. Rizal strongly said that Spaniards do not want us as brothers, neither are we eager for their affections. Moving on to Rizal's scholarship. Isabella de los Reyes, 1864 to 1938. He is a journalist, businessman, labor leader, politician, and prominent member of the schismatic Iglesia Filipina Independiente or the Philippine Independent Church, which canonized Rizal. In his Historia de Ilocos, de los Reyes upsets Rizal. He called attention to the discrepancy between some of Rizal's annotations to Morga vis-a-vis his own research. These differences of opinion were explained, according to de los Reyes, by Rizal's excessive patriotism. So, Isabella de los Reyes claimed that Rizal's too much or excessive patriotism blinds him at times, especially in writing a history. Furthermore, in this discussion, let's talk about an Indio viewpoint. The discovery of Morga's Successes de las Islas Filipinas proved to be serendipitous to Rizal. He had been rethinking the idea of Filipino not as a people who were equal to the Spanish colonizers, but a people with a unique civilization that was destroyed by colonization. Rizal found the answer to his idea in Morga's book, and it was this work that he decided to reprint with his annotations. So there are three main propositions in Rizal's new edition of Morga's Successos. First, the people of the Philippines had a culture of their own before the coming of the Spaniards. Rizal strongly believed that our ancestors or the people in the past have their own unique culture apart from the culture that is influenced or given by the Spaniards or the colonizers. Second, the Filipinos were decimated, demoralized, exploited, and ruined by Spanish colonization. So as we all know, people who are colonized by the Spaniards are forced to abide to their set of rules, to their norms, to their religions. And the present state of the Philippines was not necessarily superior to its past. So Rizal also strongly believed that our past could have been more developed or could have been richer if the Spaniards never colonized our country. So I will end this video or this discussion with the words from our national hero himself. If the book manages to awaken in you the awareness of our past, erased from memory, and to rectify what has been falsified and slandered, then I will not have labored in vain. And with this base, however small it may be, we shall all be able to dedicate ourselves to study the future. So thank you for listening. That's